And I thought maybe the doctor was telling me it was nothing they could do for us to say our goodbyes. But they said my son had already expired.
What we're looking for is that magic phone call for somebody to call in and say, hey, this is what I saw, this is whom I saw, and this is the information that I need to give you.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us for another Northeast Ohio edition of Crime Stoppers Case Files. I'm Bob France. There are over 1,400 Crime Stoppers organizations operating around the world. These organizations empower citizens like you to become directly and anonymously involved in fighting crime in our communities. We see the positive impact of this every day in Northeast Ohio as Crime Stoppers has become an important law enforcement tool, a proactive approach to removing dangerous criminals from the streets and making them safer for everyone. Each week on this television program, we'll share facts with you from unsolved cases, and you'll have the opportunity to submit information that may help investigators, possibly earning yourself a cash reward without ever having to give your name. Let's get to work. On May 3rd, 2011, 89-year-old Mary Patronite was found at the bottom of a stairway in the basement of her Baltic Avenue home with injuries that may not have come from a fall. Here's the story.
My grandparents were from Italy. And Mary was born not long after they arrived in the United States. My Aunt Mary was the eldest of 5 children, so she took total responsibility of helping my grandmother, who was widowed at an early age, to bring up her 4 brothers. After the family moved to Cleveland, she took a position at the United States Navy during the war, in the War Department. And she was actually a Navy employee until the early 70s. Living in the same house on Baltic Road for 65 years, Mary continued the gardening that my grandmother had started when they first moved to the house. And besides her gardening and her flowers, her other hobby was knitting. Small rugs, shawls, things that she could give away as presents to family and friends. Her influence across the family was very maternal and very much caring about every one of her immediate relatives, and in many cases, many of her really close friends that she had from her days at work at the Navy. We were very used to Mary's call 2 or 3 times a day, like I said. And she called in the morning, which was not unusual, but then we didn't hear from her for the rest of the day.
On May 3rd, 2011, at approximately 1810 hours, we were called to the location of 10205 Baltic Road. Baltic Road is on the west side of Cleveland. The area where the victim lived was residential. There was previous break-ins at the victim's house approximately a month before this incident, when the victim was in the hospital. Ms. Patronite lived by herself. She was a very, very, very liked person. The victim kept a very tidy house. It hadn't appeared to have been ransacked. There was a couple dishes on the table like she had just finished eating, and her cane was also on a chair by the kitchen table. Whoever came in, possibly she might have known, and she trusted. It's possible that person or persons unknown entered the victim's home and struck her and possibly pushed her down the stairs. Because of the injuries to the head, the medical examiner did not feel this was an accident. Her nephew came to her house to check on her like he did every day. And when he entered the house, he called for his aunt. He got no response. He went upstairs, where she sometimes slept. He still found no response. So finally went down to the basement. That's where he found his aunt lying on her side in a pool of blood. There were injuries to her head.
A cousin's husband had gone over to check on her. They'd lived next door, and he was the one who found her downstairs. Unresponsive, covered in blood. In fact, there was blood everywhere, from what I understand. I haven't seen the crime scene pictures, but it was not an accident.
And as a reminder, you can hear me weeknights on News Radio WTAM 1100, where you can also hear what's going on in our city and around our world every day, starting with your Info to Go Monday morning from 5 to 9 with Wills and Snyder, and online anytime at WTAM.com. Welcome back to Crime Stoppers Case Files. Crime Stoppers is a safe way to positively impact our community. And here's how it works.
Hi, I'm Cuyahoga County Sheriff Bob Reed. Crime Stoppers was designed to give concerned citizens a chance to catch criminals without risk. It works like this. When you call in your tip, you receive a code number. If your tip leads to an arrest, your code number is written on an envelope, and the envelope is filled with reward money in cash. When the suspect is arrested, you call Crime Stoppers and you get the pay date and location. You go to the location and that date, and you give them the number, and they give you the envelope and ask you to count the money. Once you count it, you're done. You'd never give your name, you'd never sign anything. No one ever knows who you are. It's that simple.
On May 3rd, 2011, 89-year-old Mary Patronite was found dead in her house. The victim kept a very tidy house. It hadn't appeared to have been ransacked. There was a couple dishes on the table like she had just finished eating, and her cane was also on a chair by the kitchen table. Whoever came in, possibly she might have known, and she trusted. It's possible that person or persons unknown entered the victim's home and struck her and possibly pushed her down the stairs. Because of the injuries to the head, the medical examiner did not feel this was an accident. We responded to the location where we went down the basement and found the victim, Mary Patronite, lying in a pool of blood. Somebody with ill intent obviously knew about this home, and the victim lived alone. Behind the house there is railroad tracks that we looked around. It possibly might have been an escape route for the suspect. They said she was a very sweet person, and there was no reason that she had to die like this. If anyone has any information in connection with the death of Mary Patronite, please call the Cleveland Police Homicide Unit. Ask for Detective Michael Smith or Detective Arthur Eccles. We're both assigned to this case, and any information that we receive will be gladly appreciated. Or you may also contact Crime Stoppers and remain anonymous.
Mary was one who gave, never really expected anything in return. She gave of herself, she gave of her resources, and she gave of her just caring and her spiritualness. That's what we remember about her. I am coming forward for my family in the hopes that anyone watching will contact Crime Stoppers and know that they can remain totally anonymous, and there's a reward for coming forward. We hope that if you know anything about what happened at the scene, or know anyone who may have said something about what happened at the scene, to please call the police.
There had been several break-ins in Mary's neighborhood around the time that this happened. It's possible that someone was there to rob her home. If you know anything that could help police with this investigation, please call Crime Stoppers at 216-252-7463. You can remain anonymous, and you will be eligible for a cash reward. We'll be right back with more Crime Stoppers case files. And as a reminder, you can hear me weeknights on News Radio WTAM 1100, where you can also hear what's going on in our city and around our world every day, starting with your Info to Go Monday morning from 5 to 9 with Wills and Snyder, and online anytime at WTAM.com. In the early morning hours of June 26, 2008, 25-year-old Manuel Davis was hanging out with some friends on Harris Avenue when a van pulled up and someone inside shouted insults at the females in Manuel's group. Manuel and a few others asked the men to leave, but moments later, a gunman exited the van and shot into the crowd, killing Manuel. Here's the story.
Him being born, healthy, everything, vibrant, anything apparent, the birth of your child, that's a blessing.
Manuel was my brother, my younger brother. Growing up, he was always into different things. He really couldn't sit still.
He was doing something he didn't have any business, and he broke his glasses. And he knew that he would get in trouble because we was doing something we weren't supposed to. So I said, well, maybe if you glue him. So he told me to hold his glasses while he tried to glue, and he got super glue, and my fingers got glued together.
He stood out. That's all you could say. He stood out. You had to, even if you was mad at him, you still had to love him because he'll make you smile when he was a kidder and everything. He the one bring the life to the party.
You know, how kids today want to just play video games and stay indoors. He wanted to go out and be adventurous.
Love running, sports, basketball. Even though he was short, he did like his basketball, but he liked the physical working out.
We enjoyed music from jazz to hip hop. So we enjoyed just good music, good bass lines. We just enjoy life and like having a good time whenever it was possible.
On June 26, 2008, at about 2 a.m., Manuel Davis, who was referred to as Manny by friends and family, was at a get-together at 9019 Harris Avenue, close to where he was living. At about 2 a.m., a gold or tan minivan with a sliding door, at least on the passenger side, began to drive westbound on Harris Avenue, approaching this get-together. Just before this location, this vehicle stopped along the curb, and one of the male occupants made a derogatory remark about the females in attendance at this get-together. Persons, including Manny, mentioned that this was a friendly get-together and they didn't want any problems to the occupants of this van. At this point, the van began to pull off westbound, and after driving approximately 40 feet past the house, the passenger side rear sliding door opened, and the rear occupant stepped out from the door and mentioned, well, this is how we roll, and proceeded to shoot approximately 7 times into the crowd, striking Manny in the left back area. The vehicle then fled from the scene. Mr. Davis was transported to Metro Health Medical Center by EMS, where a couple hours he was pronounced dead from his gunshot wound.
What you mean he's been shot? And they said, well, he got shot in the shoulder. So it's only 3 streets over from where we live at. So get up there, and already left by the time I got there. Because over there, you hear shooting that day, that night, early morning. I heard it, but you over in that area, you hear it all the time. As long as it's not coming through your window, your house, you don't worry about it. Going to the hospital, getting there, then, you know, there's no one there, you up on the floor, but you see the nurses now running with all this blood. And then you finally stop somebody, and I'm asking, who is all this blood for? And they said, Davis. And I'm like, oh my God. Then they said his lungs was filling up full of blood, and I knew then We just had to call, and then when the police and them showed up, then the doctor asked us who was there for Manuel Davis, his family. When they took us into a room, it was a very small room, and I thought maybe the doctor was telling me it was nothing they could do for us to say our goodbyes, but they said my son had already expired.
And as a reminder, you can hear me weeknights on News Radio WTAM 1100, where you can also hear what's going on in our city and around our world every day, starting with your Info to Go Monday morning from 5 to 9 with Wills and Snyder, and online anytime at WTAM.com.
On June 26, 2008, at about 2 a.m., Manuel Davis, who was referred to as Manny by friends and family, was at a get-together at 9019 Harris Avenue, close to where he was living. At about 2 a.m., a gold or tan minivan with a sliding door, at least on the passenger side, began to drive westbound on Harris Avenue, approaching this get-together. Just before this location, this vehicle stopped along the curb, and one of the male occupants made a derogatory remark about the females in attendance at this get-together. Persons, including Manny, mentioned that this was a friendly get-together and they didn't want any problems to the occupants of this van. At this point, the van began to pull off westbound, and after driving approximately 40 feet past the house, the passenger side rear sliding door opened, and the rear occupant stepped out from the door and mentioned, well, this is how we roll, and proceeded to shoot it approximately 7 times into the crowd, striking Manny in the left back area. The vehicle then fled from the scene. Mr. Davis was transported to Metro Health Medical Center by EMS, where a couple hours he was pronounced dead from his gunshot wound.
Solving this would mean everything, because there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about him.
So we can move on and have closure, or give his girls some closure.
They need to stop, because this time, even though my son lived to be 25, it might have been, they could have killed a 2-year-old. It was supposed to be people out there, you know. For you to open fire on somebody like you ain't had no sense of regarding the people on that street.
You gotta say something. There's so much crime out here and people are afraid to do anything about it. And the crime is not gonna stop until you take a stand. Nothing's gonna ever change unless we change it. And in order to take back our streets, we have to stand up, we have to do the right thing. If we have some information, we have to say it.
Anybody with information, please contact me, Detective Felito Sandoval at the Cleveland Homicide Unit, or my partner, Detective Melvin Smith. There is a cash reward for any information in regards to this case. Or call Crime Stoppers and remain anonymous.
And another reason, everybody, they didn't grieve. I haven't grieved yet, and I said I won't grieve until whenever the people come forth. Because everybody that did, they grieve, and I haven't. And I won't until my son's killers are brought to justice.
Police are looking for 3 suspects who were traveling in a minivan near Harris Avenue that evening. If you can help police solve this crime, we need you to call Crime Stoppers, 216-252-7463. You can remain anonymous, and you will be eligible for a cash reward. Thank you for joining us for another edition of Crime Stoppers Case Files, where you are empowered to help clean up the streets. Remember, our towns and our neighborhoods are a direct reflection of what we allow them to be. So let's all do our part to make them safe. We'll see you next time for another edition of Crime Stoppers Case Files.